Welcome back. So COVID-19 really took the cake at the National Assembly in the week under review. So much that the President of the Senate had to take a tour of the isolation center at the University of Abuja Teaching Hospital, Gwagwalada. In addition to that, the Senate invited the Minister of Health for a first-hand update on the efforts to contain the index case and keep the virus at bay. Now, before we bring you that report, recall that on the 7th of February, the Health Minister appeared before the Senate Committee on Health, where he disclosed that the ministry will need the sum of 620 million naira to prevent the outbreak of the coronavirus in Nigeria. And according to him, the ministry had submitted a memo for the release of the sum. Questions on whether that money has been released or not were raised when the President of the Senate, Ahmed Lawan, after his tour of the isolation center in Abuja, charged the Minister for Finance to release the money. And that was days ago. Now here's that report. The Minister of Health was at the National Assembly to brief the Senate leadership on the level of preparedness of Nigeria to contain the spread of the coronavirus. Over 3,000 people have so far died from the virus across the world, with Nigeria recording its index case through an Italian man who flew into Nigeria from Milan. Health authorities say the Italian is in a stable condition. The minister disclosed a recent development involving the Director General of the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, who had just returned from China.
We were very honored when among those scientists chosen to go to China to study it was the Director General of our own Center for Disease Control, Dr. Chikwe. So he was one of those, we're very proud and honored that the only African was to go along with these experts. So they went there for about 9 days. During the 9 days, they carried out the investigations in China. But we have already established rules here that anybody who has been to China will go into self-quarantine. So Chikwe has gone and come back, he's done the test, is negative, but we have insisted that he must undergo the 14 days of quarantine, which is why he's not here today. He's not allowed to come out until after 14 days, because if you make the rule, you must also obey it. So, which is to set the example to Nigerians that even the head of CDC is on self-quarantine as we speak. He is very well, but he has to follow the rules we laid down.
He also gave an update on the strategies by the ministry to prevent the spread of the virus.
What we do is that part of our protocol is that anybody who has been to a high-burden country who comes in and has symptoms immediately is isolated and then tested. Question of connecting flights is that one flight comes from one country, draws passengers, and it's another plane altogether that will take passengers from everywhere else, including some from that place, and then, so you can't really ban that flight because not all the people arriving here are coming from that one destination. There are some who came from Argentina, and join up, let us say, in Addis Ababa, and then come over from countries which have absolutely no problem or not. So the risk factor actually is not that high there. And then they are also screened before they board.
The President of the Senate had reservations about setting up additional isolation centers in teaching hospitals.
Should the isolation ward be full, we want teaching hospitals to clear space for us. I have my fears. I don't know if the teaching hospitals are filled up, what happens? Teaching hospitals can be big. We are not praying. But why can't we do something significant? We may not be China, but we were told that the Chinese built 1,000 capacity bed in 10 days. We may not be able to do that. But can we contrive something? Even if they are fabricated prefabs, so that we don't have to go to, if it happens, God forbid, but if it happens, we don't have to go to teaching hospitals.
The Ministry of Health should be empowered to purchase the temperature gauge, the mobile one, not the hand-carried one, so that you can get into the plane and find out people who have issues, who have health risks. If we find them out there, you now carrying the plane away because there is a place inside the airport for emergencies there. So we won't allow even the person to start coming because once that person comes down, he starts meeting our staff one after the other before he comes to that temperature gauge. By so doing, you have already many people who have infected. Like my friend Ajibola has just said, 600 million. You know, it's if a country as big as Nigeria, the impression in the public there that it does appear we are not ready. So to get these gadgets that are needed, I've said it in my motion when I brought this in the first, that NCDC should be empowered. So the Ministry of Health should be empowered to provide enough resources for NCDC to really actually sit up, you know, and do a lot of things. You know, what we have in the budget this 2020, there's nothing that I'll get there, except we service-wide vote. From there, we'll find resources to give them. So the essence of the service-wide vote is to handle some issues of this nature that are not accommodated by the budget. So let us use this opportunity to look at that and give the Ministry of Health the needed resources to get this enough. 1 billion is not more than enough. It's not too much for them to start this issue, to start handling these issues in the 4 points. We are not talking about the seaport. We were at the seaport. We didn't want if we start that issue. It's a different ballgame. So, but it's a major entry point. Even the ship comes even with more passengers than the planes. So that's another challenge.
Lawmakers also requested that the Ministry of Health should establish permanent standard isolation centers in the country to respond to future emergencies.
Before the breakout of coronavirus, when you go through the airport, your officers, they use handheld scanners to scan for, high temperature. That is before the coronavirus, broke out. So when I was coming, I was a bit scared. Well, not everybody is aware whether you have a screen, a hidden screen or not. If we are sure that you are screening people, it gives us confidence that, well, all is well. So when there is no handheld scanner and you are not sure of any screen, it gives, some, feeling that you are not secure.
We need to use this opportunity, sir, even if it will be from extra budgetary resources, to build standard isolation centers. As big as our country is, we should have at least ready-made centers with staff, which is because emergency, as we often say, the Honorable Minister, emergency doesn't give notice. Now it's coronavirus. What will be tomorrow? We had Ebola before. We were lucky for it that it wasn't in Lagos. But it can come from Maiduguri. It can come from Port Harcourt down there. We don't have this. So this is an opportunity for us, and I think that would be one of the importance of this, to have standard centers. But while we'll be battling with the standard centers, what the Honorable Minister presents as the word now, beyond just what I would call the forward, do we have specially trained staff? Do we have enough staff? I know NCDC does the training, but they say, I saw in their briefing that they are training 100 public health nurses and so on. But the minimum we need to have is that anywhere we are provided as backup, those backup centers should have staff and necessary equipment that they will use, even if they are temporary.
Meanwhile, President of the Senate, Ahmed Lawan, on Wednesday expressed disappointment at the state of the isolation centers for coronavirus located at the University of Abuja Teaching Hospital, Gwagwalada. Senator Lawan, along with members of the Senate leadership, undertook a tour of the isolation centers, after which he told journalists that he was unhappy with the lack of preparedness and the state of the isolation centers, which are yet to be completed. He also asked the Minister of Finance, Zainab Ahmed, to immediately release the sum of 620 million naira to the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, which is the amount budgeted for emergency response to the coronavirus outbreak.
The temporary isolation center is really not in good shape. It doesn't look ready to receive any patient, and I believe that this is something that we have to fix between today and tomorrow. We are in an emergency. Even if we don't have people who are affected, we shouldn't just rest on our oars. We have to do everything and anything possible to fix that temporary isolation center to be prepared and ready to receive anyone who falls sick in this respect. I am sad, we are actually, we're indeed sad that of the 620 million naira that was supposed to be released to this place for fixing of everything here, NCDC, not a kobo has been released. We are going to get across to the Minister of Finance and all the other authorities who have anything to do with this to release this money between today and tomorrow. Latest. We are in a situation that nobody should be found wanting. Everybody should be at the top of his game. There is no way that Nigeria, the largest economy in Africa, with a population of 200 million, and yet in the federal capital and the surrounding states, 6 of the North Central, you don't have one room that you can call an isolation center where anyone who unfortunately falls into this crisis would be taken to. This is not acceptable.
Thanks for watching. Send feedback to thegavel@channelstv.com. Oh, and remember to wash your hands with soap regularly and maintain proper hygiene. I'm Terry Ikumi. Bye for now.